On Monday, President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met in New York. One topic they reportedly discussed is the Iran nuclear deal, which both leaders have universally criticized and promised to bring down. Meanwhile, several press reports say that members of former President Barack Obama's team are working behind the scenes to protect the deal and prevent the Trump administration from dismantling it. Let's spend a few moments with Courtney Keeley, senior correspondent at TRT World. She's covering the UN General Assembly this week. She joins me from New York. What do you make of this move by former members of the Obama administration to try to keep the deal intact?
Well, Larry, I think it's interesting because clearly they have their fingerprints on it. It's their legacy. And that it was the one point they said if at least they had Iran's nukes in check, then they could move on towards other kinds of diplomatic solutions. I mean, I'd say the Obama administration and the Trump administration is very well aware that Iran works on two different levels, domestically, internationally, and then also in terms of who they fund and what, well, that would be three, what conflicts they're involved in. What we heard yesterday was that the Trump administration said on the Sunday talk shows, the Secretary of State Rex Tillerson said that Iran is in technical compliance. He said that they have 1 foot of 1 yard that's okay. And what this really means is what they put in place for the nuclear deal, Iran's an agreement. They're not violating that. But they have Iranian revolutionary forces in Syria. They fund Hezbollah fighters. And what President Trump and his administration are saying is that they're not keeping up in the idea of the peace and security part. They're not efforting peaceful resolutions. They are getting involved militarily. But critics can say that the U.S. and other countries are doing the same.
But
the U.S. military is involved in Syria as well.
But what clout could the Democratic officials of the Obama administration possibly have with this administration?
It's unclear. I mean, Trump just shifted alliances last week with his meeting with Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. You know, he is now saying that he might actually engage and not disengage from the Paris Climate Accords. This backpedaling of rhetoric that we saw on the campaign trail, and then what we're seeing this week at the UNGA, which is President Trump on the world stage, President Trump using language that's very, very different than when he was talking to his constituents. He's backing off of being intensely critical of the UN. He was sitting with the UN Secretary General saying we want reform. They're talking about democracy, but he's not using vulgar and critical words. He's starting to try to use words that clearly his administration is trying to get him to use.
Do you think Obama's part of this effort?
Obama's sort of having his own peace effort this week, and I don't really know if the two sides would ever talk, but I can tell you that the Democrats in general will try to save any accords, including the Iranian nuclear deal, that they put in place. They believe in it. And we are seeing that President Trump is, I wouldn't say falling in line, but I would say adjusting his policies towards a more moderate view, and we're seeing vulgarity on his Twitter feed, but we're not seeing it in what he's saying at the UN, for instance.
Obama's former UN ambassador Samantha Power tweets that it's hard to see how abandoning the Iran deal doesn't lead to war. Is that grim assessment widely shared?
I think that that's an assessment with the policymakers that were involved in the Iran nuclear deal. But I think what it does is it neglects to say that technically Iran is the major player in Syria and Iraq as well, that the U.S. is playing all sorts of sides with Iran right now, that they are engaged in ISIS in northern Iraq, against ISIS in northern Iraq, with Sunni militias that ally with not only the Iraqi government, but with Iran. And that you have to get things done against ISIS in Syria, you have to play nice with the Russians and the Iranians. So to stick to just this nuclear deal, obviously they don't want to dismantle it, and someone like Samantha Power has skin in the game. But I would say that that's slightly hysterical tones when we're actually talking about two horrible conflicts, and then the Yemen conflict as well, that Iran has its fingerprints all over, and the U.S. usually assists Saudi on. So that needs, I mean, besides the Iranian nuclear deal staying in place, what Secretary of State Rex Tillerson said is there's a whole lot to this relationship with Iran that needs to be fixed on a security level. And you'll see them talk about that more.
Courtney, you're always on the mark. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you.